Happy birthday.
The name that I decided to put on the back of my helmet was Elijah McClain. His story and just seeing who he was as a person, I just felt a personal connection with him. He liked to play music for the dogs at the shelters to help out with anxiety. And when I seen that, I just thought that was a clever and a very thoughtful thing to do. The fact that he would carve out his time, while he's working to go and just help animals. And I don't know, to me, I feel like that was such a selfless thing to do. And, I think he just had a heart of gold.
Hey, stop right there. Stop. 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 I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
Elijah McClain was walking to the convenience store. He put a ski mask on. He was anemic. He got cold very easily. A worried citizen called in and thought that he may be suspicious. And police stopped him and thought he was a person of some threat.
No, I am an introvert. Please respect the boundaries that I am speaking.
Stop tensing up.
Stop.
Relax.
Stop. I'm going home.
And I think they roughed him up. They injected him with, I think, ketamine. And I think that's the kind of lifeblood that we need to keep this nation alive. I think it did take us far too long to see Elijah's case come to the forefront. It's been over a year, and this probably shouldn't have went that long without having some type of national attention. I think that the NFL did a great job with just stepping up and knowing that backlash would come because you're going to rub some people the wrong way. And there's some people who don't want to see change. Some people are very comfortable with how things are. And, for a long time, minorities have been preaching that there needs to be change. And I think it's been ignored by a lot of people. But to see that the NFL open those doors to welcome in those topics and to let players use their platforms to lift names up, to discuss things, in the world that's happening. Can't really say enough about that. Say his name, Elijah McClain.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's another block drop. Welcome to the Leon Block, everybody. I think today is some telling news about things that we have been wanting to hear and largely ever get any kind of explanation for anything. I think today is a special kind of unique kind of day. So we know that the officers and paramedics that killed Elijah McClain are now being charged. And so I haven't went and looked much up about the details of this. So I'm going to be reading a couple articles that I came across as I'm talking to you about it. So I would love for some feedback. Follow, subscribe, like, share this post on YouTube and or Facebook. Let me know what your thoughts are for everything. I would really love to hear back from you all. So the first article I'm going to read is from, hey, where'd it go? Oh, well, that bites. The first article I had was from CNN. Here it goes. So, a Colorado grand jury indicted 3 police officers and 2 paramedics involved in the 2019 death of Elijah McClain, a 23-year-old Black man who was stopped by police while walking home from a store, placed in a hold and then injected with ketamine, Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser announced today. Aurora police officers Randy Rodama and Nathan Woodyard, former officer Jason Rosenblatt, and Aurora Fire Rescue paramedics Jeremy Cooper and Peter whatever the hell his last name is, were each indicted on charges of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide as part of a 32-count indictment. Woo! In addition, Rodema and Rosenblatt were each indicted on 1 count of assault and 1 count of crime of violence, and Cooper and the other guy were each indicted on 3 counts of assault and 6 counts of crime of violence. Wow. Wow, this is monumental. We're here today because Elijah McClain is not here, and he should be, Weiser said. When he died, he was only 23 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him, and his family and friends must now go on and must live without him. The grand jury returned the results of the investigation on Thursday, nearly 2 years since McClain's death. The indictment is a sharp contrast to prosecutors' initial conclusions in the case. In 2019, Adams County District Attorney Dave Young declined to bring criminal charges because he said prosecutors lacked evidence to prove the officers caused McClain's death or that their force was unjustified. We know that is a damn lie. But McClain's story gained renewed attention last June after the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, spurred by protests in Aurora and a viral online petition. Governor Jared Polis announced a re-examination of the case last year. Weiser was appointed as special prosecutor and opened a grand jury investigation into the case in January. In general, police officers rarely face criminal charges for the in custody deaths of Black people, and convictions in such cases are even rarer. In his news conference Wednesday, Weiser acknowledged the challenge ahead for prosecutors. Make no mistake, we acknowledge that this case will be difficult to prosecute. These types of cases are always new, he said. Our goal is to seek justice for Elijah McClain, for his family and friends, and for our state. In doing so, we advance the rule of law and our commitment that everyone is accountable and equal under the law. McClain's mother, Shaheen McClain, told CNN in a phone interview that she was excited by the news of the indictments and thanked Weiser, his team, and the grand jury. I started crying because it's been 2 years, she said. It's been a long journey, and it's overwhelming. I'm still processing it. And because this is one of those things that has never really been done, it is being done right here because of my son. So it's overwhelming. I actually do have that footage. I have to find it and put it on here. McClain's father, LaWayne Mosley, wept tears of joy at the news, according to a statement from his attorney. Nothing will bring back my son, but I am thankful that his killers will finally be held accountable, Mosley said in a statement. The Aurora Police Department, Aurora Fire Rescue, and the defendants did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Following city rules, officers and firefighters indicted on felony charges are immediately and indefinitely suspended without pay. Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson and Fire Rescue Chief Fernando Gray both offered their condolences to the McClain family and said they will cooperate with the judicial process. A civil investigation into the APD and AFD patterns and practices of civil rights violations is ongoing, Weiser said. McClain stopped while walking home from a store. McClain's final moments have previously been described in the form of police body camera footage and a 157-page independent investigative report funded by the Aurora City Council. Like those documents, the 24-page indictment details the events of August 24th, 2019, when officers received a call about a person wearing a ski mask. The officers confronted McClain, a massage therapist, musician, and animal lover, was walking home from a convenience store carrying a plastic bag of iced teas. The officers tried to physically restrain him, leading to a struggle, the indictment states. I'm an introvert, McClain said in a video recorded by body cam worn cameras after officers confronted him. Please respect the boundaries that I am speaking. Relax, an officer said at one point, or I'm going to have to change the situation. The fuck? McClain, who had earbuds in his ears, told the officers he was trying to stop his music so that he could listen to them. During the struggle, one officer said, he just grabbed your gun, dude. One officer told McClain that he will bring my dog out and he's going to bite you if McClain kept messing around. During the struggle, officers twice placed McClain in a hold, which officers used their biceps and forearm to cut off blood flow to a subject's brain, the indictment says. McClain briefly lost consciousness, but continued to struggle with officers after waking up. They also put him in handcuffs and held him on the ground despite repeated pleas that he could not breathe, the document states. Cooper and the guy whose name I cannot pronounce. Aurora fire paramedics then arrived at the scene and diagnosed McClain with excited delirium, a controversial diagnosis that describes violent agitation. Neither paramedic checked his vital signs, talked to McClain, or touched him before making the diagnosis, the indictment states. They then injected McClain with a dose of the sedative drug ketamine based on an estimate that he was 200 pounds. He, in fact, weighed 143 pounds, according to the indictment. By the time he was placed on the gurney, Mr. McClain appeared unconscious, had no muscle tone, was limp, and had visible vomit coming from his nose and mouth. Officer Podema said he heard McClain snoring, which can be a sign of ketamine overdose. Paramedics found that he had no pulse and was not breathing and performed CPR. He never gained consciousness and was declared brain dead on August 27th, the indictment states. His life support was then removed and he became an organ donor. Indictment differs on cause of death. The indictment differs most clearly from prior documents in regards to the officers' and paramedics' actions as having possibly caused his death. An initial autopsy conducted by the county coroner did not determine the cause of death, but noted intense physical exertion and narrow left coronary artery were contributing factors. The coroner found the amount of ketamine in the system to be a therapeutic amount. There was no official determination as to how McClain died, a point the district attorney noted in his explanation of why he decided not to prosecute. I cannot take a case to the jury where I don't know what the cause of death is on a homicide case, Dave Young told CNN last year. However, the indictment notes the officer's physical restraints and paramedics' ketamine administration and cites a clear cause of death. Mr. McClain was a normal, healthy 23-year-old man prior to encountering law enforcement and medical response personnel, the indictment states. A forensic pathologist's opinion that the cause of death for Mr. McClain was complications following acute ketamine administration during violent subdual and restraint by law enforcement and emergency response personnel, and the manner of death was homicide. And again, that comes from an article from CNN. I'm going to throw that in the comments if anyone wants to see that. And this one's from ABC News. I'm not big on ABC News, but I will go ahead and share this one as well. So what I'm looking at here, what I'm looking for is some kind of information as to how this can play out. Like how much of a chance, do we have of them getting a substantial sentence to where we feel like we've gotten some sort of justice for the death of Elijah McClain? Because this is, besides Derek Chauvin this year, this is the only other case that we can really gauge. And I'm just really curious as to how this is going to play out. So what I'm going to do is find articles with some kind of experts that do talk about it, right? Because I think a lot of us are like still kind of holding our breath given the Aurora police department and fire department stance and history of excessive use against citizens, especially vulnerable citizens, because we know that they've assaulted elderly people, and I haven't really looked into their history much beyond that, but so McClain's pleading words captured on body camera video, "I'm just different," were posted on signs as at protests and spoken by celebrities who joined those calling for the prosecution of the officers who stopped McClain as he walked down the street in the city of Aurora after a 911 caller reported that he looked suspicious. Stories about McClain, a massage therapist described by family and friends as gentle and kind, an introvert. It filled social media, including how he volunteered to play his violin and comfort cats at an animal shelter. The Aurora Police Department has been plagued by allegations of misconduct against people of color, including an officer charged this summer with pistol whipping a black man. The department's new chief has vowed to work to rebuild public trust. Attorney General Phil Weiser said a grand jury indicted officers, blah blah blah, and fire department paramedics Jeremy Cooper and the guy's last name I cannot pronounce. I'm going to get this right, y'all, so I can pronounce these names because these names need to be heard. I fully stand by that. These names need to be heard. Their mugshots need to be plastered on every social media platform that we can find around. People need to know these names, and they need to be more popular than Elijah McClain's name. For real, for real. We need to know who these people are. We need to know their history. I want to know what kind of people they are behind besides this video. Rodema and Rosenblatt also each were charged with second-degree assault with intent to cause bodily injury and one count of a crime of violence related to the assault charge. Cooper and the other guy also each faced 3 counts of second-degree assault. The Associated Press has sought comment from lawyers for the defendants. The Aurora Police Association said there was no evidence the officers caused McClain's death. And I think I actually have it here. So this is what they said. The hysterical overreaction to this case has severely damaged the police department. So the full statement, as it says, immediately after Elijah McClain's death, then Aurora Police Department Chief Nick Metz stated clearly that Mr. McClain was not murdered by Aurora Police Department officers. Nothing has changed. Our officers did nothing wrong. Okay. Sadly, Mr. McClain died due to a combination of exertion due to his decision to violently resist arrest and a pre-existing heart condition. He was alive and talking when the officers turned him over to EMS. There's no evidence that APD officers caused his death. The hysterical overreaction to this case has severely damaged the police department. Inevitably, the public are the ones who paid the price. This fall, the public has the opportunity to restore sanity to this situation with the city council elections. Wow. Wow. This is, I mean, I'm not surprised. Most people aren't surprised, but the fact that, wow. All right, then. At a brief news conference, Weiser said the goal was to seek justice for McClain and his loved ones. He was a son, a nephew, a brother, a friend, Weiser said. He had his whole life ahead of him. Mother Shaheen McClain is overwhelmed emotionally by this news and appreciates the hard work of Phil Weiser and the rest of his team. There is not a day that goes by that she does not think of her son Elijah, according to a statement from her lawyer. It's a very rare for officers to face criminal charges in on-duty deaths, and it's almost unheard of for paramedics to be charged, said Alex Picaro, a criminologist at the University of Miami. It's a pretty big deal, he said. The fact that a grand jury saw the evidence and decided what charges to file is an indication of a strong case, he says. Facing pressure during nationwide protests last year, Democratic Governor Jared Polis ordered Weiser to open a new criminal investigation. In 2019, a district attorney said he could not charge the officers because an autopsy could not determine how McClain died. It's one of several investigations, including separate reviews of McClain's arrest commissioned by the city in a comprehensive review of the police department. The U.S. Justice Department and the FBI also announced a civil rights investigation into McClain's death, while Weiser's office is conducting a similar probe into the agency, the first under a new Colorado police accountability law. Aurora's critical review did not find any evidence to justify officers stopping McClain as he was walking home from a store on August 24th, 2019, after a 911 caller had reported a man wearing a ski mask and waving his hands who seemed sketchy. His family said McClain wore the mask because he had anemia and that caused him to get cold easy. I really wonder, because they said that the person who called the police stated that he didn't have a gun on him. That I just wonder, that person that called police, like, how they feel about this now, and how are they racked with guilt about calling? Where's their stance on things? Like, I just really want to know about the person that called the police on him. Yes. This whole thing is extremely heartbreaking. I think the good thing about this is that this is bringing up conversations about this kind of situation happening all over again, and shedding light again to the most vulnerable populations of our communities here in America. It's important that we continue to rally behind our people and get the justice that we need. And so this information coming out is extremely important. We need to take hold of this, latch on, and continue to have these discussions around it, and continue to spread awareness about it, about what's happening, about how we feel, about making sure that individuals like Elijah and more are protected, and all people of disenfranchised groups, really. The police departments and the police complex, the FOP, all of those evil entities need to be checked, and we need to make sure that we are policing the police. So I think that there can be good coming from this. I hate to say the word reinvigorating, but it's reinvigorating the talk, the conversations around this subject. So this article proceeds to describe the situation again, and then it says the chokehold used on McClain has been banned by police departments and in some states, including Colorado, following Floyd's killing. The Attorney General's announcement comes after 3 Aurora officers, including Rosenblatt, one of those charged in McClain's death, were fired, and one resigned last year over photos mimicking the chokehold used on the 23-year-old. Police Chief Vanessa Wilson vowed change, but spent her first days in her job last year apologizing after officers put 4 black girls, on the ground and handcuffed 2 of them in a car that police suspected was stolen but turned out not to be. In July, an Aurora police officer was charged with assault after being captured on body cam video, pistol whipping, and choking a black man during an arrest. And that was really difficult to watch, actually. Another officer was charged with not intervening as required under new police accountability law. And again, I did share that article in the comments too. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, chime in, leave a comment, share, like, follow, subscribe. And so this other article is from The Cut. And it breaks down, I guess, the night. This case is a textbook example of law enforcement's desperate and racist treatment of Black men. McClain's family members and their legal team said in a joint statement on February 22nd per ABC. Aurora's continued failure to acknowledge the wrongdoing of its employees only exasperates the problem. Despite local media coverage and some smaller rallies, McClain's death did not initially receive widespread attention in the press. Not until the killing of George Floyd sparked widespread protests against racially motivated police brutality over the summer. Here's everything we know about Elijah McClain. So it goes ahead to describe just after 10:30 on August 24th, 2019, they received a call, the Aurora Police Department, about a suspicious person wearing a mask and waving his hands. They brought the officers Woodyard, Rosenblatt, and Rodema to the scene. According to the family, the 23-year-old made a quick trip to the convenience store to pick up an iced tea for his brother. His sister later told a local ABC affiliate that McClain was wearing an open-face ski mask because he had anemia and would sometimes get cold. And although he was unarmed, simply walking home, and his sister said, listening to music, police say a struggle ensued. I've worked in a field where Asperger and autism and even more severe diagnosis isn't always detected on initial contact. Mental health and the stereotype with people of color they give us has had, I'm tearing up as I'm, has had us behind bars or dead before we surrendered them our name, shaking my head. And this is the core of why I'm sharing this, because all too often, like, many people in our society express themselves in ways that other people, or the way the media portrays as normal, and doesn't like to show us. We have to understand that not everyone understands you, or the way that you express yourself, or the way that the norm is set to be understood to express. And you have to understand, police and law enforcement and these kind of entities need to understand that there are people out there that you cannot always tell where they lie on spectrums, or where their mental health or stereotypes may lie. And it's important to be trained on how to conduct protocol to have the best outcomes possible. First of all, I don't think police should be handling these situations to begin with at all. That's a whole nother topic. But the fact that this particular case is coming to light again and we're getting justice, and the fact that someone that was autistic is getting justice, the fact that someone died at the hands of police simply because they were autistic and were misunderstood and were not heard, were not respected, were completely violated, speaks volumes. This is a good thing. This is a good thing, because we need to be having these conversations. We need to be having conversations about body shaming. We need to be having conversations about having the right language and etiquette, and being understanding of all kinds of different kinds of people. That in particular is important. There's an episode that I'm going to be doing soon about the phrases big dick energy and small dick energy. And there's a reason why I'm going to be doing an episode on that, and I will give you a little bit of taste on that later on, but it's extremely important. And I think that it speaks volumes to talk about the different kinds of abuse that everyone faces at the hands of stereotypes and status quo and media and bullying and what have you. So it's important just to be mindful of different viewpoints on things, and then be mindful of different types of people in the world. So again, it's extremely important that we're having these conversations, particularly because of the different kind of viewpoint of life that Elijah saw life as. Body cam footage of the arrest does exist, although the ADP did not release it to the public until late November 2019, obviously months after McClain's death. In the footage, an officer can be heard admitting McClain had done nothing wrong. He had done nothing illegal prior to his arrest. Another accuses McClain of reaching for one of their guns. McClain, meanwhile, can be heard asking the officers to stop, explaining that they started to arrest him as he was stopping his music to listen. He gasps that he cannot breathe. He tells them his name, says he has ID but no gun, and pleads that his house is right there. He sobs and vomits and apologizes. One of the officers can be heard threatening to set his dog on McClain if he keeps messing around, and exclaiming that he exhibited an extreme show of strength when officers tried to pin back his arms. Very little of the officer's protocol can be seen, however, because all of their body cams allegedly fell off during the arrest. But if you watch the video from about the 15-minute mark, warning it contains violent, upsetting content, you'll see someone picking up the body camera and point it toward McClain and one of the officers before dropping it back into the grass. Around 15:34, one of the officers seems to say, "Leave your camera there." An autopsy initially listed McClain's cause of death as undetermined. As Mary Newman, an attorney for McClain's family, said at the time, though, whatever the report says, it's clear that if the police had not attacked Elijah McClain, he would be alive today. The APD placed Woodyard, Rosenblatt, and Rodema on paid administrative leave in the immediate incident's aftermath. On November 22nd, 2019, Adams County prosecutors announced that they would not bring charges against the trio, who then returned to normal duty. According to the Sentinel, District Attorney Dave Young informed Aurora Police Chief Nick Metz in a letter that, based on the investigation presented and the applicable Colorado law, there is no reasonable likelihood of success of proving any state crimes beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Therefore, no state criminal charges will be filed as a result of this incident. Metz subsequently called the officer's threats to McClain unprofessional and said that the comment had been addressed with the officer had been addressed with that officer through a written corrective action. So we want to publicly know, like, Newman, meanwhile, told the Sentinel, if Aurora thinks this is appropriate policing, the community should be petrified. We are disappointed, but not surprised that once again, members of law enforcement will not be held criminally accountable for killing an unarmed Black man. On June 13th, the APD quietly reassigned Woodyard and Rosenblatt to non-enforcement duties, with Rodema following on June 20th. The APD did not reply to the Cut's request for comment, but a spokesperson intimated to Fox 31 Denver that concern for the officer's safety motivated the decision. Oh my God. So you're not even, it's not, oh my goodness. Wow. I mean, when I heard about the chokehold that happened this year and I saw that article and watched the video, I then became aware of the APD's horrible actions and then started remembering back to Elijah McClain, but I didn't realize they were this bad. Like, okay. So Rosenblatt would be let go on July 3rd, but not for his involvement in McClain's death. Interim Police Chief Wilson fired him along with two other officers who appeared in photos taken at a memorial for McClain in October 2019. Wow. In the images, another officer, Jaron Jones, who resigned, posed with his arm wrapped around Officer Kyle Dittrich's neck, a mocking imitation of the hold used on McClain. Both officers were smiling, with Officer Erica Marrero grinned over their shoulders. Rosenblatt did not participate in the photograph, but he did text "ha ha" when someone sent it to him, according to the New York Times. Announcing the termination, Wilson said that Rosenblatt was being fired for his utter inability to do the right thing here, while Dittrich and Marrero showed a lack of moral values and integrity. Multiple investigations into the case began over the summer. Today, I signed an executive order designating Attorney General Phil Weiser to investigate and, if the facts support prosecution, criminally prosecute any individuals whose actions caused the death of Elijah McClain. So that was back on June 25th. The governor, Jared Polis, signed the order. And here it is. I was moved by speaking with Elijah's mother and her description of her son as a responsible and curious child who became a vegetarian to be a healthier and who could inspire the darkest soul. His friends describe him as a gentle peacemaker who worked as a massage therapist and enjoyed playing the violin. Elijah McClain should be alive today, and we owe it to his family to take this step and elevate the pursuit of justice in his name to a statewide concern. Now more than ever, we must do everything within our power to foster public trust and confidence in law enforcement and the criminal justice system. That's why I have appointed a special prosecutor to investigate this case, and it's why earlier this month we took a step in the right direction by signing sweeping bipartisan police reform legislation into law that has now established significant new accountability for officer-involved killings. As a father, my heart breaks for the McClain family. All Coloradans should be safe walking home from the convenience store or just being in their own neighborhoods listening to headphones. Unfortunately, I know that is not how many people, especially young people of color, feel in our state today because I've heard it from them directly. We need to do a better job, and at a bare minimum, they deserve a thorough review of the case. And you can go on colorado.gov/governor to check out that post, but it was released last year in June. And then on August 28th, CBS Denver reported that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment would reopen its probe into how a paramedic came to inject McClain with 500 milligrams of ketamine during his violent arrest and its connection to his subsequent death. That inquest is ongoing. The independent panel's report is scathing. On February 22nd, the independent investigators released the results of their months-long inquest that combed body cam footage, videotaped interviews with the responding officers and their follow-up reports, notes from the scene, the 911 call, and the dispatch report, the autopsy report, medical records, and more. In 157 pages, the investigators contend that the APD stretched the record to exonerate the officers rather than present a neutral version of the facts, and that the police, particularly Woodyard, escalated what may have been a consensual encounter with Mr. McClain into an investigatory stop without reason to suspect criminal activity. This decision had ramifications for the rest of the encounter, the report states, emphasizing the speed with which officers resorted to what investigators deemed unnecessary force and questioning the justification for a pat-down search in the first place. Wow, something just caught my attention here. My bad. The report, uh, after the fact, the report states detectives with the APD's Major Crimes Unit failed to ask basic critical questions about the justification for the use of force and seemingly ignored contrary evidence in its investigation of the incident. Yes, what I am sharing is from the article called The Cut. And I will go ahead. Hi, Alicia. Thank you for tuning in to the Leon Block. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the article here so everyone else can either read along or check further information and links from it. So there you go right there. On Monday, City Manager Twombly said I like that name, Twombly. He and City Council were reviewing their report and look forward to hearing additional context during their presentation before we comment further, according to ABC. McClain's mother, Shaheen McClain, told CNN, which is a statement I gave to y'all earlier. Y'all can check back. I'm not going to read it for a third time. This is the third article that I've read, but I do want to get different points of view of media of what their telling is on this situation. McClain's family has filed a civil rights suit against Aurora, Colorado, on August 11th, alleging that the city's unconstitutional conduct on the night of August 24th, 2019 is part of a larger custom, policy, and practice of racism and brutality, as reflected by its conduct both before and after its murder of Elijah McClain. The suit, that was according to CNN, the suit lists members of the police department, including the officers involved in McClain's death and those involved in the photo incident and Aurora Fire Rescue as defendants. It argues that there was no need to restrain McClain, who had not been accused of a crime, as aggressively as the officers did, and no need to inject him with a massive dose of ketamine. The suit suggests that McClain's detention was a product of racial bias, which it says was reinforced by the city's failure to discipline the parties responsible for his death. Further, the lawsuit points to recent combative police response to peaceful protesters. Ding, 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 ding. Mary Newman, the family's attorney, said she intends the lawsuit to hold accountable the Aurora officers, police officers, the paramedics responsible for McClain's murder, and to force the city of Aurora to change its long-standing pattern of brutal and racist policing. McClain worked as a massage therapist and taught himself to play both the guitar and violin. According to the Sentinel, he often spent his lunch breaks at local animal shelters, putting on concerts for cats and dogs because he believed music would help soothe their anxiety. Those who knew him describe him as a gentle. I don't even think he would set a mousetrap if there was a rodent problem, his friend told the Sentinel. He often developed friendships with his massage clients, like April Young, who told the Sentinel. He had a childlike spirit. He lived in his own little world. He was never into fitting in. He was just who he was. He was the sweetest, purest person I've ever met. Another of his friends and former clients, Marna Arnett, added, he was definitely a light in a whole lot of darkness. Arnett believes that in addition to helping manage a chronic chill that McClain attributed to his anemia, wearing a mask helped him manage his social anxiety. He would hide behind that mask, Arnett said. It was protection for him, too. It made him more comfortable being in the outside world. Speaking to CBS in Denver, his mother described her son as incredibly determined. I thank God that he was my son, because just him being born brought life into my world. You know what I mean? She said, I know he was giving life to other people too. And again, I shared that article as well. That's from The Cut. And I mean, there's tons of articles out there you can read, and by now, everyone's jumping on a bandwagon to share their articles and their opinions about this situation. But I really want to know your thoughts about this situation, everyone, because this is, I think, this is not only a monumental but a powerful moment in civil justice history for people that are different. As he said, I'm just different. I can only hope and be optimistic that they will be charged as the universe sees fit. And I think that this is a completely different case from George Floyd's case, not to down or diminish the importance of that case, because I am upset that Derek Chauvin did not get a bigger, larger sentence, and other people, we still have yet to see them get prosecuted and charged, get sentenced. But with this sentence, or with this case, I really do think that it's a stronger case. I think that with the sensitivity of it and with renewed public outcry, there will be some kind of justice in the sense of healing and in the sense of semblance. Let this be a movement towards progression of outing all of the other cases, not just ones that involve mental health, but all police brutality cases. Let this be a catalyst to us keep going with this momentum, to keep going and speaking truth to power, to keep going and being alongside our brothers, sisters, and non-binary people, parents, family members, and relatives of those slain by police and law enforcement, and those alike, because we need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting for our environment. We need to keep fighting for our people that are all different. We need to make sure that we're checking everybody, because, well, we all deserve to be equal, right? Take care, y'all.